evening once again, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another amazing session of the MCT Nigeria M365 user group. I'm excited to be here. Last week was fun. It was great learning and also a lot of networking. We had a great time last week looking at the part one of this series, the Microsoft Teams governance. We're going to be looking at the concluding parts this week and then a twist to it. We have another speaker with us joining us on board today, and that's Foyin, my very own sister from another mother, Foyin Olajide-Bello. So I'm super excited to have her here, and then with Abu, I bet these duo are going to make a very great duo, and then I can imagine what they're bringing on board really. So last week we had a look at the Microsoft Teams governance, how we can put control in place, at the same time not compromising on the facts that we want our users to be able to adopt and then to be able to collaborate well with the use of the Microsoft Teams. We had a look at how we can set up policies or control or governance on the organizational level, on the tenant, on the users level, and also how we can avoid things like Microsoft Teams sprawl, really. So, but today, these two are going to do justice to all of those topics we looked at last week. So, with me, a little bit of introduction about Foyin Olajide-Bello. She's a cloud consultant for over 12 years of experience in the Microsoft space. She has deployed a lot of solutions. She's an MVP on the Power Platform, and then, like I said, she's actually very dear to me because I used to call her my sister from another mother. So, and she's a founder of the Textiler, a group that we co-founded together. That's, to help female get ready, get job ready, and then to help the female space in the IT industry. And apart from that, she has been involved in a lot of projects that I personally can testify to it. And then her professionalism is something that I cannot but say that it is very, very on point. So I think a lot of accolades I'm giving to Point there. So, but then I'll allow her to do a bit of
I'm,
introduction for,
I'm
for
sure you
herself.
can see me grinning from ear to ear.
That's nice. And then joining for you also is Abu Abid. We had a swell time with Abid last week. The session was so powerful that we didn't even want it to end. So this week, we want to learn more from Abib. He told us Abu Abid. So he told us that how we can learn from his mistakes that he made in the industry. I'm actually very eager. Last week I learned a lot, and I'm sure this week I'm going to learn again. So without wasting much of the time, let me just run us through our housekeeping rules. The session will be recorded, as you can see. I'm going to crave your indulgence to have this session recorded, and one of the reasons is that we want to make it available for anyone that is presently not on call, so that we can and the person can have access to it afterwards. Also, one of the things we like to say here is that please kindly mute your microphone when you're not talking. It's very important so you do not distract the speakers. If there is any questions you have, kindly pen them down until the Q&A sessions where we will have time to ask our amazing speakers the questions, any of those things or scenario designs that are disturbing us and we want to have answers to it. Also, kindly follow us on our Twitter page. We have it at NGM365. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can have up-to-date information on all of our events and also on the recordings that we've posted. We also value your feedback. We'll be sharing with you a link for the feedback so that we can tell us if there's any other topic you want us to treat, and also if there is any other way you feel we can improve on this. Once again, the M365 user group is just a community group that fosters that is just concerned about fostering knowledge on the M365 products and technology. So we do a lot of things on Office 365, EMS, and Windows 10 and Azure. So feel free to join us, spread the news, and then we have our meetup every Friday, 5 p.m. West African time. So without wasting much of the time, I'd like to hand over to Foyi and Abu to take us on this wonderful topic. Over to you guys.
Hiya. Thank you so much for that. And again, powerful words there from Ola. I hope that I certainly live up to your expectations. You know Foyin all too well, so I'm sure she will.
Yes, sure.
So, obviously, following on from last week's session, we obviously want to go into a bit more of a demo, a bit more of a deep dive into how we can implement some of these teams and covenants, policies and controls. Ola, could I please have the presenter role, so I can kick us off?
Oh, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry, sorry, sorry.
All right, not a problem, not a problem. So we have there we are. Right. So what are we going to go over today? Well, we've kind of had the about us, haven't we? Thanks for that, Ola. You've saved me a job. We're going to quickly go over a kind of overview of kind of Microsoft Teams covenants, just quickly recapping what we've already spoken about in the last session, and then we're just going to get straight into it. I'm going to hand over to Foyin, and she's going to take us through the first bit. So, Microsoft Teams, it's more than just a chat platform. I think everyone seems to think that it's just this kind of chat platform, and you can just have a conversation. It's not a Skype for Business replacement. It's an alternative. It's a better alternative. It really changes the collaboration behavior in an organization. As we can kind of see at the bottom there, you've got this kind of overarching client, and we're taking advantage of a lot of the Office and 365 and Azure services and the obviously legacy Skype infrastructure as well. It's not just a chat platform. We can obviously work on documents in there. We can start to add in other apps. We can start to really take benefit, especially now, of this collaborative working idea. So you might remember from my last session, I put this up right at the end, this quick sort of high level, what is the team's life cycle? And there are really 3 phases to it, and I really do want to spend about 15 minutes on each phase and just kind of go over those high levels of what you can do, and that might start to give you some ideas as to how you can implement Teams covenants in your organization. So the initiate phase, which is what Foyin will be taking us over very shortly, is all about creating the team and getting it set up right. Obviously, out of the box, you've got the ability to create a team. That ability will always remain, unless you do what we are proposing that you do. And I will leave that as a bit of a cliffhanger for Foyin to sort of come in on. But we all know, and I will quickly just bring up my little demo environment. We all know that you can go into your Teams environment, you can create a team either from a template or from scratch, and away you go. You've got a team to work with. But as Foyin will explain in a moment, there are more options. We then have the active phase of the team. After it's all configured properly, we're going to start adding people to that team. We're going to start using that team. And how can we put some controls in around that to make sure that users are getting the best out of it? And then we've got the obviously at the end of life phase. And this is really about closing off any teams that aren't being used anymore, or perhaps shouldn't be used anymore. And we'll go through how to configure the expiration policies on those. So, without taking up too much of Foyin's time, I'm going to stop and hand over to Foyin to take us through the automation of creating teams. Foyin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abu. Okay, so let's get to it. As Abu has mentioned, the first phase of the team's life cycle is the creation of teams. Now, what we have seen and observed over time is, sorry, mic check. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. Sorry, I'm on mute
So
there.
what it's fine. What we discovered over time is when we leave the create a team button open, which some of you may have already experienced in your organizations. People just create teams for all sort of funny things, right? I could even create a team and call it Foyin, or maybe I'm just testing something and I say Foyin test. And we discover that there's this sprawl of teams, and then the administrators are like, what is going on here? 2,000 teams? How many are we in the whole organization? So governance comes in where you start to ask the question, do you want to lock this ability, or do you want to have some process around it? I mean, not because anyone rejects the need to create a team, but sometimes when we put process in place, there is this consciousness that the users have that, oh, I can't just make a request and say I want to create a team for test or for my personal use. I have to put a business justification and a reason for why I want this team to be created. So that is what has brought about the automation or auto provisioning of teams. Auto provisioning has been around for a while. Some organizations have used it for SharePoint, like to auto provision SharePoint sites. So it's not entirely new in itself, but it's also something that we leverage with teams. So now let's assume that our organization, Contoso Limited, has decided that we want people to go through an approval process before they can create a team. So first thing we need to do is I'm just going to share my screen. No. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is stop the ability for people to create teams, right? So this article I have up on my screen just says how you do that, right? Because the button is there. So if you want people to use your app, you have to take away the default out of the box ability for them to do that. And so the steps here are very simple. I'll just drop it in the chat window. Is basically a PowerShell script that needs to be run against a security group, and those are the only people that will be able to create a team. So just come here and drop the link here so we can read that up in our spare time. So next thing we want to do is, right, we want users to approve. How do they do that? You need to create an app for it. So my app was done with Power Apps. Can you use Microsoft Forms? No, unfortunately you can't, because there are a number of things that happen on this app that Microsoft Forms cannot give to you, right? So this is a simple app that was created to request for a team. And there are different ways you can do this. You can do this off of Power Apps directly, or you can decide to do it on Dataverse. That's using the Power Apps that resides within Teams, right? But this is just on make.powerapps.com, right? There are two options. This is to create from blank, and this is to use a template. So when Abu went to create a new team and he was scrolling, I'm sure he said that a lot of templates are available. Some of us may have already observed this ourselves. A lot collaborate, manage an event, a project, so many templates are available to us. So if you want this to be available to your users, then you use this button, right? So I would go here to start my request, and you can create the visibility. So if it's public or private, you can make that choice here and come next. Then the other thing that, please Ignore my test here. So the other thing is you can check for the availability of that team name, right? So you don't want people creating team names that are already available. So that's what this does. This is a flow in Power Automate, which we'll look at in a bit. You can get users to select their business areas, which we can then use to tailor the approvals. And then they put in a description, why do they need this team, and then can go next. And then you specify the owners. So in this app, what we have done is we have insisted that they have to impute two owners, which is also something that comes from a governance perspective to say you have to have two owners. You cannot be the only one to own this request. It has to be two of you. So in case one person leaves the organization, there's somebody else that the organization can fall back on. And you can add your members here, which is optional because you can do that after the team has been created. So you go to next and you have this summary screen that basically shows you a summary of everything that you have requested for and submit. So you can then go to the status page and see your request has been submitted, successfully. So what then happens in my process is this request is sent to the approvers. So what happened then? Oh, sorry, apologies. What happens then is your request is submitted to the approvers. So remember we selected a particular business unit. So for each of those business units, they have certain people who have been assigned as approvers. So when it goes to them, I'll go to the back end in a bit. They are able to approve or reject your request. So let me refresh. So you can either check here or we have this approvals app now in Teams. So that's also available to you to check on your approvals. So if I come here and I go to the approvals app, I can also see the requests that have been assigned to me and I can approve from within Teams. So you can see this is the request I just made now. So I can do it from here or from my email. And you see all of those who are assigned to this request. And I can say approved and submit the request, the approval. So upon the submission of the approval, the status of the request goes to approved, refresh, or no, Teams creation, actually approved, yeah. Then after approved is Teams creation, because the creation of the Teams automatically starts when the status has been changed to approved. And after, say, about 10 minutes, your team will be successfully created. Right, so if you take a look at my teams, you will see I've done so many test one, test all over the place. All right, so what happens in the back? Behind all of this, we have apologies, the life of a wife and mother. So we have, you can see I have all of this, my test template and all of this here. So everything is just coming from my team's request I've created. So while we are waiting for that, let me show us what's going on behind a bit of it, right? So this is straightforward, the Power Apps. Then there are different ways you can do this. You can either use Azure Logic Apps for it, right? So in Azure Logic Apps, you have the whole flow being built out in this way. So from the app designer, you see, when an item is created in SharePoint and you set your variables, picking all the things that you need and your connections and everything can be done here, But what I did was I built this in Power Automate. So these are my flows. I have my approval flow, which is here. And all that is happening here is, okay, hold on to that thought. Let me I've jumped a step. Let me talk about the data sources, right? So behind these Power Apps, the data is submitting somewhere, and what I'm using is SharePoint, right? So in SharePoint, I have a couple of lists that I use. The first list I have is my master list, where all the requests come into. So you can see my team name, description, business justification, owners and members, visibility, everything is coming here, right? Then the other list I have here is my templates. So this has all the templates that are available on my Teams admin center. And all of this is the ones that Microsoft gave us by default. So each of those templates have what they call the template ID. And this is what the flow will use to create the theme based on whichever template that you have selected, right? Then I have my approvers. I have my approvers here. So this, in the app, they were selecting their business units. So these are my business units here. And these are the group mails of those business units. These are basically security groups, right? Now, the thing is, for every security group that you create, there is a group GUID, which I'll show you why it's important. The group GUID can be found in Azure AD. So if you go to Azure AD and you go to groups, you see the group GUID there. So you just copy from there and bring it here. Now, when you go into the approval flow, okay, when you go into approval flow, you have to use this Office 365 groups connector to pick the group ID that the user had, the group GUID of the group that the user had selected when he was making the request, right? And then loop through the approvals to get the names of those people and then push the approval flow to them, right? So that's how the approval flow knows who and who to go to. Because we have created a security group that has certain people in them. It knows that, okay, these are the 5 people that are supposed to approve for maybe procurement. So whenever a user or a member of procurement fills the request a team app and selects procurement, the solution knows that these are people I should throw the approval to, because I have gotten the group GUID here and I've done my compose, so that it loops through all of the people in that group and sends out the approval to them. Now, because I'm saying first to respond, it means that if Foyin responds, for example, Abu doesn't need to respond again, or Jumoke doesn't need to respond again, because I have responded to the approval request. And that's basically what happens. And then a notification is sent, to the user that the request has been approved. And we also update the item to approved. Where's my status? So what now happens after this is to approved. And that is what triggers my next flow, right? So on my next flow, is also watching the same SharePoint list. However, I've put in a filter there to say you should watch that list when the status is equals to approved. So if you come to my process request, okay, here. If you come here and you go to settings, I have a filter here that basically says this flow should only run when the value is equal to approved. So that's how I'm able to control my flow and ensure that the two of them are not running at the same time. So as long as status value is not equal to approved, this flow is not going to run. But as soon as it's approved, it just kicks off this flow on that particular item. And then this flow runs. So what's happening here? A lot of things are happening. I'll try to make it as simple as possible. I'm getting the members and the owners that were inputted into my app, and I'm creating the team. Now, in the creation of the team, because the create new team is fairly new in Power Automate, and what it does is it automatically adds I think the service account, or it automatically adds whoever is making that request to the owner, and that's the only person it can add. But whereas the person making the request may not necessarily be the owner of the team. It doesn't give us all the flexibility that we require because it's fairly new. That's why we have to use call the graph API and create a Microsoft 365 group first. So on top of that group, we then create a team. So this is where I defined the values that my group should be created with. So I have my display name, coming from the SharePoint. All of these shows SharePoint are coming directly from SharePoint. Then I have my mail nickname, which is very important. So in the app, I have a hidden field where I have taken this team name and asked it to filter out all the invalid characters. So mail nickname, for those of us who are familiar with Exchange, it doesn't allow spaces, it doesn't allow dashes and all that. So the Power App does that filtering for me and automatically saves the name this in SharePoint, and then I can use that. Then all of the other things are there. Then here may not be important to your requests or whatever you're working on, but what's happening here is I'm saying that I don't want any welcome mail whenever this Microsoft 365 group is created. So for some of us that are available, active on the group, there was the time I asked the question, you cannot disable the team's welcome email, but however, you can disable the one that comes from Microsoft 365. And this is the way of disabling it within your Graph API. So this defines my Microsoft 365 group, and it goes ahead, calls the post method in Graph and creates the group. And once that is done, it then creates the team on top of that. So in between, I'm checking if the template is standard or not, because I also have all of the other custom templates in my app. In the app, you can request for the default one, the standard one, or the custom one. So that's basically what happens, and on till the team is created. And when it's created, it shows a message on each of the team, basically saying, welcome, you have been added to this team, blah, 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 and updates the status to team created. And that's how the process ends. So this is the flow. So you can see, I don't know if let me check. Okay. I don't know if it's up yet, but if you go to any of the ones I created previously, you will see the, welcome message here posted. Then this one was coming from a template. So you can see all of the channels for that particular template were automatically created with it. Yeah, so I think that brings us, so this is, there are several options, right? The option I've shown you, I've mentioned two options. You can either use your Power Apps and Power Automate. You can use Power Apps and Azure Logic Apps. You can also use PowerShell, right? You can use the basic manual PowerShell to run the creation of teams, or you can automate your shell where you define the variables in it and it automatically runs the deployment for you. So these are the different options for creating a team, auto creation or auto provisioning of a team. So I don't know if you have any questions. We can take it during Q&A, like Jumoke said. So Abu, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Foyin. That was very informative, and I have seen that grow. Personally, myself, I've seen that app grow from concept to where it is now, and yeah, it is absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for showing us that, Foyin. So yes, as Foyin said, that's obviously one of the ways that we can control the creation of our new teams in order to avoid sprawl, in order to avoid any issues. So let's move on to the other things that we can do at that initiate stage. And one of the things that you can do through the app that Foyin was showing us was you can start to really pin down your group naming standards. That's something that we can't necessarily do if we are using out of the box features. So suppose we're using out of the box features here. Let's sort of walk through how can we start to put in some of those controls and really sort of pin down the group naming conventions. So here we are in Azure AD. And I'm going to come over into groups, and you'll see here we've got naming policy. Okay. Now we can upload custom blocked words list, and I mentioned this in my last session where certain organizations will turn around and say, well, actually we don't want people to be able to create a HR team. We want admins to have that role. So we can start to upload our own blocked words. This is where things get really interesting, because we now have the ability to add a prefix, add a suffix into our group names. So from here I can select string, and I can say the prefix will be let's just say ABC. So each of the new groups created will now start with ABC. Okay. And if I really wanted to, we can do that. So you have ABC group name XYZ. Obviously, you wouldn't put both in, you'd put one or the other. So this is how we can start to implement some of the group naming policies as well. Obviously, I won't save that. So that really takes care of our starting of our team. What about when it's in life phase? What about when users are actually actively using it? Well, within the Teams Admin Center, we obviously have a number of policies, and these policies control what users can and can't do. Now, as this is a tenant with very few users, we all have the global policy, and the global policy allows us to do everything, because that's the way I've configured them. Now, if we wanted to, suppose, let's say we want to control how meetings work, okay, we can go into our meeting policy, and let's create a new one and just call this meeting version 2, okay. And you can see here we've got a lot of options. Now, I want to bring your attention to one big sorry, I just got a call there. To one big option here, which is in the participants and guests. Okay. Now, this is something that I configure for pretty much any tenant I work with. Okay. And that is letting anonymous people start and join a meeting. Okay. So you'll see here, let anonymous people start a meeting is turned off. Obviously, we do not want people external to your organization to come in and start the meeting without you. And that's because I want the ability to control who is admitted into my meetings. Okay, I host a lot of meetings on my tenant, and nearly all of those meetings have an external participant. And what we don't want is for untrusted people to be able to come into that meeting, okay, because people can obviously dial in as well. People can dial in through their mobile phones and call a number 0203, etc., and they can dial into that meeting. What we don't want is those people to just come in without properly authenticating themselves. So if I do have callers joining through their mobile phones, I do generally ask them as they come into the meeting, please do make yourself heard and tell us who you are, because we don't want Greg joining, because Greg is not privy to information that perhaps John is obviously privy to. But like I said, you've got a lot of flexibility here in your meeting policies. If we head over to messaging policies, again, I'm just going to open this global one now. We can control the ability to delete and edit messages and use some fun content. As you can see, I'm pretty relaxed with my Giphy content rating. I don't necessarily have a restriction in for my users. So once your team is set up, all of these policies start to kick in, and now we have the ability for users to chat, to add all their files to their teams, and to collaborate, and to add apps. And there's one thing I forgot to mention, which is the apps. Obviously, we've got the permission policies and setup policies, but let's now suppose that we want to put a bit more control into what users can do in the team, okay? And for that, within the actual team itself, there is the ability to control what happens for all the members and all the guests, okay? So I, as the owner of the team, and by the way, only owners of the teams can change these permissions, have the ability to turn things on and off. So I have got a big team. Let's just say that in this team I have 100 people and we all are using it actively, and we have a few too many channels. Well, that's not a problem. We can just take that ability away, okay? And in doing so, we're also taking the private channel ability away. We don't want people to delete and restore. We, as the owner or owners, want to retain control of that. So I can turn that off. Apps we're okay with. We don't mind people adding apps into the team and adding a Power BI dashboard or adding an Asana app into it. It's all working just the way we want. We also have the ability for owners to delete all messages. Now, this will only work if it's enabled at the tenant level in the messaging policy. But if you have this turned on, you as the team owner have the ability to turn this off as well. Giving the members ability to obviously edit and delete their messages as well. Let's just flick these back on for a sec because I want to go over to the guest permissions. Now, this is really important. If you have people external to your organization joining your team to collaborate with you, the question becomes, do you want them to have the ability to create, update, and delete channels? Now, for me personally, I don't. I don't like them to have that ability. So I generally, on each team that I create, I turn that off unless it's obviously this org-wide team, which is only for my internal users. Okay. We can obviously then go in and start to generate team codes to allow people to join. We can turn off the ability for app mentions. We again have this fun stuff. We can enable Giphies, and you can see here I've now started to restrict a little bit more on the content rating. At a tenant level, there isn't any restriction. At a team level, I like to then granularly apply all of those policies to all of my users. And you can obviously have tags as well. So that is how we manage teams, okay? And you can see here that we have analytics into that as well, as to what is happening in that team. And this is really important because if you as a team owner have spotted that, oh, actually, we don't really have that many people using it. How many people are actively using this team? How many people are actually engaging? Well, you can come here and have a look and see. And this all really comes down to how you have configured your team. If your team has been configured to be very strict, you know, if we go back over here into the member permissions and we've got all of this stuff turned off, well, that doesn't really give people the ability to collaborate as much as they may want to collaborate. Okay, so really important to have a look at those analytics. All team members should have a look at those analytics. We also can see the apps that are in our team. So if we just head over to our general channel, you can see obviously we've got the default files tab. I've got a few email messages I was playing around with Power Automate recently. And we can obviously upload our files into here, as we all know. We then have the ability to, that was me playing around with a website. I can create a list, add an existing list into here, or I can create a new list. And obviously we've got the wiki as well. Okay, so that is the life of the channel, and that is how we manage the life of the channel. Now we'll move on to the unset phase and how we can expire, archive and delete our teams. I mentioned this previously as well in the last session, that to delete and to expire teams are two very different things. To delete a team is basically to remove it completely from view and purge all data that comes with it. Really important, but if you want to do that, have your retention policy set up. I won't go into the compliance center and sort of go into detail on that, because that's something for a different session. But the delete will essentially soft delete your team for 30 days, after which you can come back. During that phase, you can come back and obviously reinstate the team. And after that 30-day period, it is permanently deleted. It should be noted that if you want to set up an expiration policy through Azure Active Directory, which I will show you here now, so we can go ahead and set that up and say that all teams will expire in 180 days, and send an email to me before they expire, and hit save on that, which I won't do because this is obviously my tenant, and there will be teams that will start to die very quickly there. We will then be deleting teams after 180 days of non-activity. Okay, it's important to note that it will only expire after 180 days if there has been no activity, i.e. users haven't accessed any channels, haven't accessed any files in the teams, haven't sent a chat message in the team itself. Okay, that's when it'll start to happen. And the owners, the group owners, will get a notification. Okay, and you can see here a new notification is emailed to group owners 30 days, 15 days, and 1 day prior to group expiration. What this means is we are giving the group owners 3 opportunities to extend that 180 days expiration policy. If they say, no, I do obviously want this team to continue, that is absolutely fine. They just have to tell us in that email to extend it, and they can extend another 180 days. That's perfectly fine. Okay. If, however, you want to archive your teams, that isn't possible through the expiration policy. Expiration policies will soft delete for 30 days and then permanently delete your team. So that is how we close off teams. Now, this is really, really important, because what you can end up with is sprawl of teams that really shouldn't be there anymore, purely because their purpose has finished. You had a team to handle a specific project. That project has now come to an end. We now need that team to be deleted, okay, because it's just taken up space. Okay, so That is how we configure expiration policies. Now, that pretty much covers off what we were here to do in showing you how to configure some of your governance controls. Now, one major theme that I'm sure everyone will see in the adoption and the governance work streams of your Teams implementation is communication. You have to communicate to your staff and to your employees and all the users of Teams how they should be using Teams. Where are the features they should be using? If, for example, you want to build a bot, a bit like what Foyin has obviously demonstrated on this call, then tell your users that, and obviously this is our policy, this is how we want to do things, and you have to make that available to them. If you want people to have the ability to create channels and add apps, tell your users how can they do that in a team, okay? And definitely communicate how you are going to expire your teams or obviously archive your teams. That is a key, because what you don't want is people coming to the 180-day mark and there are loads of emails going out to people because they haven't used their team in 180 days and people don't know what to do with it. So communicate that to them, tell them that. Communication is really key in any implementation, new or old. So that wraps up our session. Now, I know some people in the last session had asked me for my contact details, so there's my email address there if you need to contact me in regards to anything I have spoken about in the session or the previous session. And I will open the floor up to questions for either myself or Foyin.
Great, guys. Thank you so much for this. We're ready to take questions now. I personally, I've been blown away with what I've been seeing. I love the automation part of what Foyin showed. Makes the life so easy, and then you topping it with an ice. I saw what Abu did. I've been blown away here, and I really love this. So now we'll be taking questions. If any one of us have any questions, please, it's time now for us to ask. Yes, someone has a question, please. Can you unmute and tell us, Andrew, please? Yes, actually, Andrew was the first person on this call. And
hello from Australia. Hello.
Oh, very nice.
Yes, thank you kindly. You're too kind. My question is, because I've been in IT for 23 years plus. So my question is, can you control the apps? Let's say you want to, I come from a background where I've done conditional access policies, Azure AD and stuff like, let's say you've got some apps, but they're only restricted to certain users. Is that possible, or is there a way of doing that, or vice versa?
Absolutely. So just to cover off your point there in brief, because this is a whole other conversation by itself.
I know.
We have the ability to control what apps are available at the tenant level, i.e. to all users in your organization, and that's done through the Manage Apps section of the Teams Admin Center. So I can go in here and I can say, actually, at a tenant level, I don't like Foyin, so I'm turning off Power Ups, and I can just turn Power Ups off, and she can't create her lovely little Power Ups.
Ouch. Okay.
Obviously, I wouldn't do that because Foyin is a whiz at Power Ups, and I'm not. So I can go ahead and let's just pick one of these 365 projects. I use Microsoft Project as an organization, and we don't want people to use anything else. So that is now being blocked. Okay. So if I now refresh this page, you will see that 365 projects has been blocked. But there are a whole host of other apps that are allowed at a tenant level. Okay, so I can go into the permissions policies, and you can see I've already got a global and a Gen X policy. Okay, so our global policy is going to apply to every single user in the tenant. Okay, but I can then sort of turn around and say, well, actually, I want the Gen X guys to have access to all the Microsoft apps. I want to allow specific third-party apps. So I can say here, I want to allow them access to Asana, and they can't have any custom apps. And now when we apply that policy to people in that department, whoever we want to apply that to, they will only get that third-party app and all of the Microsoft apps. Now you can be really granular with this, and I've seen organizations where they've created an app permission policy per department, and that kind of works really well, because that then ties into the setup policies, and we can say, let's go into this policy I've already created here. Let's say that this is going to tie into our Gen X app permission policy. I can then put Asana, which, should they have permission to it, I can then have that down the left-hand side of their Teams. So as they come into Teams here, they will have Asana down here on the left-hand side.
Cool.
So that's how we can manage permissions and the visibility of apps in Teams.
Cool. Yeah, I get the question a lot. Last few years, like, oh, we got these custom apps, but we don't want let's say the sales people can have it, but the marketing people that should not have it, and vice versa. So
absolutely. So you would, in that instance, I would create an app permission policy per department, and that's how you can control that access to it.
Thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, great. Do we have any other question from anyone? I guess a lot of us were just so choked. I mean, how will I put it? Not choked. I think a lot of us were just so interested or in what we're seeing. At a point, I didn't even post a lot of the notification or the reminder to people. Somebody has to tap me, "You've not sent anything on the evaluation." I said, "Oh, I think Abu and Foyin did justice to this." Do we still have any question from anyone? Okay. So if we do not have any question, this recording will be made available. Just look out for the information, and then do subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can get notified for updates. And then when this is posted, all the same, because this is a recurring meeting, I'm also going to try to post this to this meeting session at the end of the day once we upload this the recording to the YouTube. Thank you once again, Abu. But before I leave, I also want to let us know what our session will be next time. We'll be having another wonderful speaker on spam management in Microsoft 365. I guess we're going to be looking at this session with Adewale Raji next week. If you are the type that has been saddled with a lot of spams, attack, or unsolicited emails, please, this is the place to come. And even if it is anyone around chats and all of that, we'll see how we can protect it when it comes to the Microsoft 365. So thank you once again, guys, for this session. It's been an amazing and very, very insightful session for me, and I guess for every one of us on the call. So I think we've come to the end. And with that, I want to say do have a very lovely weekend ahead.